Okay.
Awesome.
Awesome.
All right. Going live on Facebook. Let's see. Preparing.
What platform are you using that that fire thing, right? Swift fire.
Zoom. Yeah. This one is Zoom. Let's see. Okay. It's taking a minute here.
No problem.
Only me. Public. Let's see. All right. Just getting the title in here. Okay. Okay. We are live, I believe. Here we go.
Awesome.
My name is Dr. Sharnael Wolverton-Sehon with swiftfire.org True TV. This is a delight for me to have Logan Jayson on with us today. How are you doing, Mr. Jayson?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Awesome. So
hi, everybody out there in social media. Thanks for joining in.
Yes. So for those of you who are new to Jayson, I'm going to let him share a little bit about his venture and story and how he got here, but also wanted to just tell you how I found him. And, you know, everything is divine. There's no coincidences, but I love numbers. I love code. He's a decoder. You know how things work out. It's just like one thing leads to another, and then this person goes over here. And basically, I was on YouTube and found a video called Decode Your Life. And when I clicked it, the intro music was Stranger Things, which is significant for me. And so I was listening and I was watching, and it's got like the Matrix, you know, coding on here, which is another, anyway. He takes coding to levels that I have not seen coding be at levels. So it's pretty radical. I'm going to, for everyone who's watching, I'm going to suggest and encourage and invite you to have an open mind. Some of the things that he goes into, you know, you may not resonate with you, and that's fine. And there may be a ton of million things that actually resonate with you. But the goal for me today would be for you to hear a little bit about who he is, how he got here, and introduce you to his channel, because he has got so many videos explaining in detail. And I love the visuals and the graphics of where he comes up as he's coded movies, music, people. He goes back to their birth dates. You know, I'm going to let him give you a little example of a few. We're probably going to have some so you can actually see him live in action. But first of all, so I've spent, I don't know what, 10, 15, 20 hours on the phone and through social media with this guy over the last week. Was it a week ago we met? It seems like a long time ago, but
yeah, a little bit longer than that, but that's about roundabout right time.
And I literally have watched so many of his videos because it's given me insight on how it's given me a filter of how to look at things differently. And, you know, part of what my show is about is having all kinds of people with all diverse backgrounds and different experiences for all of us to come together and have the courage to look at all the different things and to, you know, maybe not participate, but just at least listen to one another and learn and just get some different ideas about how other people do things. And this guy, oh my gosh. So tell me a little bit, I know, but tell me a little bit, how did you get here and how did you start this whole coding thing?
Awesome. Well, first and foremost, you know, it's a lot because of all the great decoders out there, and that would be you that I'm talking about. I'm not going to mention any specific names, but there are some amazing decoders out there, and the decoding world is really starting to take off because people are realizing that there's a code to this matrix. And when you start to observe it through the numbers and the letters and the words that we speak, which are just spells, you realize that we, you know, all of us are partaking and ushering in the change that constantly moves through the sin or sine wave and cosine waves that make up our matrix reality and the vibrational frequencies. And we talked about the scalar waves and all that kind of stuff. But I got started, you know, I can give kudos out and say, you know, like Zachary Hubbard, who, you know, he's been a huge pivotal person in the decoding world. I got started because of that guy. He's the one that I first kind of got interested in decoding back in 2013, I think it was. And I thought what he had to say was really interesting. You know, he does his thing and I do mine, and everybody, all the other decoders, we all kind of do our own thing, and we're all our own minds going out there and decoding. And, you know, for me, I went off on my own and I started to bring in multiple layers of the mystical arts because they're all connected, and I found they're all connected. So when you start to connect the dots, you're not just using what the typical decoder would use as like gematria or what I call numerology, because there's so many words that can connect together that equal the same things, and it starts to kind of water things down and it gets convoluted and it gets muddied. So when you bring in other layers, like, you know, the typical deck of playing cards, you know, why are these so important in attaching it to numerology, and how are they so accurate in describing our own birthdays? You know, I mean, I could send every single one of you out there watching this your specific card tied to your birthday, and I can promise you that it will be about 90% or higher in its accuracy in describing who you are. How is that possible? Because see, you were born, a lot of these things that are written about these cards were written back in the 13th and 14th century, and yet here we are, and I wasn't born in the 13th and 14th century. Sharnael, you weren't born then as well. So, but how are these cards, how can these tarot cards, how can they actually be so accurate in describing who we are when you know how to interpret them? It's very easy. The logical explanation is that the life is completely fixed and rigged. And what I mean by that is there's a script that's playing out called life, the game of life. We all play the game of life. And the script is none other than like an HTML code that a coder will write for software, like, you know, Windows XP and, you know, the Mac operating systems, Mojave and all, they're all coded. And that's exactly how our lives are. They're all coded into this womb called the matrix. And what happens is that everything that gets manifested in our world becomes part of the code. So you can come out with a brand new card deck, brand new tomorrow, and you, because the game of life is fixed, your card deck will automatically be kind of in that code, and it will be connected to that code in some way, shape, or form. And you can see it when you start to connect the dots. So that's how I got started. I got fascinated with numerology, and I became fanatic at it. I did a lot of sacrifices. I had to sacrifice a lot of my life. I pissed off a lot of people, hurt a lot of feelings, but it was part of my destiny. I realized that, you know, studying all this great research led me to my destiny and what I do and why I'm here and what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's exactly what each and every one of you out there should be trying to figure out, is how to decode yourself. That was the video that I put out. It's about an hour and 5 minutes long, the one that you caught on with, Sharnael. And that one is, 10 layers on how to decode yourself. And right now we're moving into, or have already moved into, the age of Aquarius. And that is, I know thyself. We've moved out of the Piscean age, which is all revolved around, the Jesus character and religion and all that. That's over. That's going to be completely finished. It will get fizzled out because there's no need for it anymore, because everything is going internal. And so the very best thing that any one of you out there listening and watching to this can do is to decode yourself, what your birthday is, what your numbers mean, what your life path and numerology, your soul contract, what your cards are. There's multiple cards you're going to have, what your tarot cards are, how, you should have an astrologer read your natal chart and give you your blueprint and the interpretation of that blueprint, because that's where your true power is going to come into play. Most of you out there don't know your true power. You're not living out your true destiny. You're just fiddling around with some job that's probably easy for you and you probably don't like it. I like the quote, instead of committing suicide, people go to work. A lot of you go to work and you hate your job, you hate your boss, you just really deep down inside don't like it. That's because you're not fulfilling your destiny, which was already written, your script. It's, like I always like to use the game Super Mario Brothers, because everybody knows that by Nintendo. Somebody had to write that code. And when you grab the remote control and you start to control Mario Brothers, you can make them spit fireballs and make them grow and step on turtles and go down go down the pipes and all that stuff. But at the very end, you fight the same bad guy. It's all the same. So the game of life is completely fixed. It's already written in the software. And when you finally come to terms with that, because sometimes it can be a real horror for people, because they're like, wait a minute, my life's not my own. It's not. Your life's not your own. That's why, I can give you a great example. The Bible, for example, the greatest selling book of all time. It's the biggest spell book, by the way. The Bible is a spell book. Every piece of literature is a spell book. Every time someone preaches from that book, they're casting those spells, which is why all those things are coming true. Because, of course, the most popular book in the world is getting casted all its spells. And, of course, everybody reading that and preaching it and praying to it are making it come to fruition. That's why, and movies are the same way. That's why people say, oh, predictive programming. Movies are inspired by the divine as well. It's not just a book that was written by man. I mean, there are so many other great books out there, spell books like the Upanishads. I mean, the Vedic system the Hindu religion is the oldest known religion that we know of. And yet I ask people that are Christians or Catholics or Protestants, I'm like, have you ever read the Upanishads? No, that's demonology. Or they'll say, I've never read it before. So I'm like, well, how can you say that your book is the right way? Right? So instead of arguing or debating over that, all we have to do is say everything all leads to the same origin. It doesn't matter what religion you follow, whether it be Muslim or whether you're, a Jew or whether you're a Christian, they're all the same, just leading to the same origin. You all worship the same God, if you will, because it runs everything down here. That's its multiple personality, because all of us have multiple personalities, Sharnael. You know that, right? I mean, I do. I know I do. And so what's really fascinating about my research and all of the great decoders out there who I give all kudos to, because all of you have given me so much insight into my world and why I'm doing all the videos. I have over 120 videos, 150 videos now of showing and supporting, not just saying my opinion, because it's easy to come on here and say, hey, this is the way it works and this is how everything is. But I'm backing everything that I'm saying up with real math and science and numbers and real tangible things that can be measured in a laboratory. And, when you support your opinion with these modalities and you show patterns over and over, which is what I've been showing, and showing that everybody has a code to them and that man is being used. Man is being used like a marionette on strings. And the free will that we think we have, I can't say for sure, do we have any free will? But I can tell you right now, we are being absolutely used. And that may be a horror for some people to accept, because like, no, I'm going to decide to go do something like this or something like that, just to prove you wrong. But then I always pose the question, well, that voice in the back of your head, how can you prove that you're in control of that voice? You cannot do that. I cannot prove that you're in control of it, or someone's in control of you, or something's in control of you. But yet on the same flip of the coin, you can't prove to me that you're in control of that voice. So the downloads that we get, everybody out there listening, anytime you get a download, a song pops in your head out of the blue, you should be able to decode that, because it's giving you a sign to push you and navigate you towards what your next play is in the game of life, your next mission, and it's, I think the closest to reality that we can come to is through the Vedic system, which is the golden age to the dark age, and then it repeats. And I love the old proverb where when the game is over, the king and the pawn go back in the same box. It really doesn't matter your position per se. It's just that we're all part of this team. Kind of like, a football team, you have all the men out in the field, or baseball on the baseball diamond. There really isn't no person that's more important than the other, because everybody has their role that they're playing. But most of you out there don't know your role. You just kind of go through life, etch your way through life. And some of you are really miserable at doing that. And you complain about it. But if you know your true power through decoding yourself, well, your life will start to become much more profound, because then you start to see, oh my God, that's exactly what I'm feeling. And there's a lot of aha moments, Sharnael, you get a lot of like confirmations. You get a lot of confirmations when you have somebody read your charts and your numerology and all that. And you realize, okay, now I know I'm on the right path. That's why I've been feeling this way. That's why I was told. That's why I met this person. Everybody in your life right now is exactly supposed to be in your life right now. There are no accidents. So there's no mistakes in life. We just like to call it that, so we can make an excuse for the things that we call bad happen in our life. But there are no mistakes. There are just events that happen in our lives, and they all can be decoded. That's the great part about it. So, that's kind of my little intro in a nutshell, if you will, on everything.
Yeah. And, you and I have went round and round because we don't agree on every single thing, for sure, which is fine. And that's, again, what part of my show is about, is just having a lot of different people come in and say, where they're at, what their perspective is. And one of the big things, and I hope you're going to give some examples, but one of the big things, we talked about like mining for gold, and how certain people are selected for the importance of being a battery, and how events can be a battery, or songs, or people, or whether you're Hollywood situation or NFL or government, how people can be chosen for a battery. Because if all crowds of people, like in a stadium or whatever, are focused on, like, let's say Michael Jackson, and he's up there and he's been selected to be this currency or gold or battery, then he's taking in a lot of energy. And then whoever can live off the gold from that specific person, instead of trying to get everything separate and fragmented. And so when I'm watching all this, because I watched several before I reached out to you, I was super depressed, because I was like, okay, I get that there is loosh, that they can live off the fear, but then there's also, now you're introducing that they can live off this currency, this battery, this gold, which I had heard about how we were created as slaves for the purpose of mining gold. But I literally had thought about it as in Africa or California, they're like mining literally physical gold, but you're talking about a frequency, a currency similar to living off the loosh thing. So that led me to, looking at these charts of multiple people that you brought to the channel, and every single one of them were doing exactly what they incarnated to do. Like, they lived it out. And you already knew that because they had passed, right? So it's like you saw the beginning to the end on some of these people who were not living, and you could follow the trace steps, which I know you're going to do in a minute. But I got triggered, and I called you crying, because I was just like, okay, please tell me that it's not fixed, that we can change the game, because everything I'm about is being a co-creator, of working with source who's inside of me, in my DNA, and being able to change the game, not just to be in the game, but to change the game. And your response to me was, Well, and that's how you were created. You were created to think that you can do that. So just keep doing that, because if you don't, I mean, not your exact words, but I was like, well, what's the point then? If I could just sit on the couch and do nothing, I'm not going to be happy if I can't think that I'm doing something. It's like everyone wants to have a purpose and think they're doing something. And you were kind of like, there, you didn't say that, but I kind of felt like you were like, and it's okay. You could keep thinking that you're doing something, but really they're just living off the fact that you're trying to do something and you are doing something, and they're living off of that. So good for you. But I am still, for the record, I swear, I still think I don't agree with you on that, and that's okay. But can you please show us? I want them to see your magic. I want them to see just an example. Whoever should bring up somebody on the screen share so people can actually see what you're talking about.
I will, and I'll use Keanu Reeves as an example, because a lot of people know who that guy is. But look, as I said, if you take away the notion of us being used like a marionette, like your script has already been written and you're just playing it out, and how much free will do we have, right? There's no way to gauge that. We may have, it's possible that some of, we have a little bit of free will, but I think that when we get off course of our script, we get injected with a move in life, like something would happen, an event, and it'll push you back on course again. So we may have a little bit of free will in that instance. I can totally see that, but I completely believe that our lives are completely scripted. And, the Greeks talked about, this is not new that I'm talking about us being used for energetic food. The Greeks called it ambrosia, and that was the food for the gods. And, I've gone into great lengths of showing this through multiple videos, not just one, hours and hours of presentations and supporting what I'm saying, that we're batteries. That's why, a battery has a positive and negative side. Well, here it is. Your right and left hand, your right and left legs, those are your anode and cathodes, your positive and negative sides of your battery. And we give off energy. And, as I showed in, like, Michael Jackson decoded, Prince decoded, the Truman Show decoded, all these big things that are, Lady Gaga just decoded. They're all, when you're one of those kinds of people on the screen of a movie, or when you go on stage, if you can imagine being on stage with a musical instrument in your hand or a microphone, and you're the center of attention, and there are 50,000 screaming fans in the crowd, all looking at you. Can you imagine the amount of energy that person or people on stage are going to get? You're going to be getting a ton of energy, and that energy gets stored up in the blood, in the body. That's why the blood is very sacred. And in numerology, the blood, that equals the number 23, the same as the words history and crown, major nouns in our words of vocabulary that get spoken all the time as spells that are linked to this word blood, the crown. And it's fascinating because it's also linked to pi, which is what we're all stuck in. We're all stuck inside of pi, the infinite circle, which is what we live on. We live on a circle. And I'm not going to get into the whole debate of whether we're on a globe or a flat earth or a concave earth. I have my own opinions, but that's really neither here nor there. We live inside of a circle, a sphere, and we're all stuck in pi, the 360-degree circle, and it contains an infinite amount of numbers because pi is infinite. It starts off with the number 3, which is the Trinity, and then it goes infinite on the feminine side of the decimal, on the right side of the decimal. And when you bring in the cards of the tarot to show you the example, and you bring in the animal cards, which, I know you love these, Sharnael, because these show animals on here, and I know how fond you are of the animals. But clearly pi is 3.1. We know it has 3.14, but the most balanced version of pi is 3.1 on both sides. So you have this card right here in the medicine card deck called the turkey card. And the description of that card is to give away things, to give away. The turkey is to give away. Now, what happens at Thanksgiving? The turkey gives itself away to people that want to consume it on that specific day because it's the most consumed animal on the day of Thanksgiving. So it gives itself away in that fashion. Well, this is pie. And what happens is, this is card 31, 3.1, and then we go down the hole. This is the rabbit hole. This is card 30. So 31 and 30 go hand in hand right there. So we actually are given away into the fall of man. We go down the rabbit hole and we're like Alice in Wonderland chasing the rabbit down into that hole called pie. And now we're all stuck here down in this physical body. Now there's no proof of where we go after this. There's no proof of any of that. There's only opinions. Anybody that can say, well, I've been to the afterlife and I've come back. Well, how are you to prove that? You cannot prove a vision. You cannot prove a dream. You can only express it. But when we start to talk about this reality right here, now we can start to define that through these layers called the mystical arts and the astrology. And I believe the very reason why the Bible was written and tells you to stay away from because these things are considered demonic, satanic, these things. Yet people play them all the time. You know, I mean, it's funny because the church will tell you the tarot's demonic, yet, you know, they'll play cards in their house. They'll play Go Fish and Gin Rummy and all that stuff. These are the same thing. It's just this one came first. So it's really kind of a catch-22, and it's really just calling the kettle black. But really the church has told you to stay away from that because there you will find the truth of how this matrix reality works. And you can start to see people and where their lives are and what their talents are and why they're here. I mean, I was telling you before we started this broadcast, last night I started to decode Jeff Bezos and Amazon, and I started to decode Elon Musk and SpaceX, and you know, all these people, they're just playing out their part. And that's where, you know, we as people have to stop and we can observe. But when we start to get into judgment, you can have your opinion on somebody, right? But your opinion should not have anything attached to it, because the Vedics will tell you, you know, nirvana, which is true enlightenment, which is kind of how I think everything works. I mean, if there's a way out of this game, you have to leave everything behind. You cannot have any attachments. That includes physical. You're not going to take anything with you, but then that also includes your beliefs. The more beliefs you get rid of and you get off of your body. I mean, you know, in the healing world, in the naturopathic healing world, I've been in health and wellness my entire life. And I love the natural healing elements of people that are doing this great work. And a lot of it is getting rid of the beliefs that get stuck inside of our energetic fields. And then those cause disruptions in the way we vibrate. So if you can get rid of those beliefs, and that's what personal development, I'm a huge advocate of Landmark, and you know, I've done it. I just did it again for the third time back in February before we had this lockdown. And I encourage all of you to do Landmark. I don't get anything from it. I don't get any referral fees. It's a gift because I know that everybody that could go through it would learn and be able to become a better person of who you are now. And it allows you to get rid of a lot of the cancers, a lot of the resentment and anger. A lot of you still don't like your mom and dad because of what they did to you when you were a child, and you hold on to that and it gets stuck inside your vibrational frequencies, and that just hurts you. And that's the same thing with our beliefs. I think, you know, once we release a lot of these attachments through understanding or understanding our code, we can then release a lot of the things, and that will lead us to, you know, what the Vedics call nirvana.
Well, I know everything that you're saying because I've seen your work. But for those who don't know what decoding is, or even understanding what you're saying right now, can you show us something so they can lock into that? And then I think what you're saying may connect a little bit more.
Yep. Well, let me start off with this one right here, because this one was a big deal for me when I was decoding it. And you know, everybody knows who Tesla is. And if you don't know who Tesla is, you should look up who this guy is, because he's a big inspiration to a lot of people. And one of his most famous quotes was this one right here. You know, if you only knew the magnificence of the 369, you'd have the key to the universe. The key. What's the key? It's the 369. Well, what's really fascinating is when you start to do alchemy, and maybe this is one of the first times you've observed these elements on the periodic table since you were in high school. I know when I started to look at these things, it was the first time since high school, but as fate would have it, everything's embedded in our words and language. And here we are talking about the I am. And, you can get into theology for sure. And then you go back to the burning bush and the I am that I am, that talked to Moses and that whole story, which it's a story. It's a story, it's an allegory, but nonetheless, it has merit because clearly we're talking about it right here. And you'll see that the I am is spelled out using these two elements. And you have iodine, which, this is the I. How many times did you personally, listening out there, how many times you say, I'm going to the gym, I got to go to the grocery store, I am this, I am that. You're constantly defining yourself using these two words right here. And so they have great significance. And this is the key to the universe because we are all co-creators. And that's why I say the script, even though I believe it's already been written, everything you do and everything you say is part of that script. So you're playing out your part like I am, like Sharnael is. And when you start to do the alchemy of these two elements, the iodine and now I want to digress. This element right here is not natural. It's a synthetic element made in a laboratory by bombarding elements together, but the iodine is. Keep in mind that this element right here is an essential element for the body. Iodine is something for the thyroid. If you have an iodine deficiency, well, your body's going to suffer. And, this protects the thyroid. It controls a lot of the thyroid's activities. So, when you bring in, now we get into the esoteric, right? Well, how can that from the human being be tied into the spoken word and now Tesla and what he's saying here, the key to the universe? So iodine is a natural element, but americium is not. But when you bring the two together and you form the alchemy, that's the blending of these two together, and you add them up over to the trusty calculator, you'll see that you get that 369. It's 369.965. But on the masculine side of the decimal right here, this is the masculine, this is the feminine side, and the decimal separates the two. And as I always say, how do you know that? Well, the next time you go pump gas, this side of the decimal feeds this side. So this one gives birth to this one. So this one's masculine. So there's your key to the universe right there. It's I am, the iodine and the americium. And when you start to look at these things and a little bit further, now you can go into the string of pi, where you can find every single number. And when you type in that 53, which is iodine, you'll see it's right here at the 8th digit. Now 8 is the number of infinity. When you take the number 8 and you flip it on its side, it's the number of infinity. So it has infinite possibilities. It's endless, which is the I. Now, what about the am? So you type the 95 in and you'll find it here at the number 30. Now I go back to this right here to show you, here's the am, I am. That's down the rabbit hole. So the 95, which is one half of the I am, is the rabbit card going down the rabbit hole. The magician pulls the rabbit out of its hat. Alice followed the rabbit down the rabbit hole. She fell down the hole. We are all Alice. And if you're not a female, you're a Jack. You're a Jack in the box, Jack in the beanstalk, Jack Reacher, Jack this. JFK was known as Jack. Jack, 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 Jack. That's why Jack in the Box, the restaurant Jack in the Box, if you look at the guy who actually came out with the Jack in the Box fast food restaurant, he's tied to the 4 diamonds card. This is the 30th card in the deck. And this is the 30th card in that deck. So this is the box, the 4 diamonds. Diamonds is also related to what's called Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Maybe you've heard that song by the Beatles. Mm-hmm. The Beatles were just telling you their truth. And of course, why are they called the Beatles? Because it's linked to the scarab beetle in the Egyptian times. And that symbol is a representation of death and regeneration. And they have a lot of truth in their songs. I've decoded the Great Pyramid of Giza, and in there I've included the song 8 Days a Week, because pyramids, they have 8 sides, the Great Pyramid of Giza. that has 8 sides to it. And quite possibly we've been off track. I mean, I know the 7 colors of the rainbow are linked to the 7 days of the week, but there quite possibly is another layer to this, and that is there's 8 days to the week. I'm actually working on something to that effect right now, and that's tied to the 45 and the circle of pi that we're living into right now. But really, it's all about this rabbit that we follow down into the rabbit hole, and we all forgot why we're here and what we're supposed to be doing. And through this great research that a lot of these decoders are doing, we're starting to make sense of this. And it's really interesting. I was watching a movie called The Bourne Ultimatum with Jason Bourne, if you've ever seen that series. And there, in that series, in that movie, it talks about Jason Bourne actually signing up to do the program of this Black Ops program, and he forgets everything. And throughout the whole series, he's trying to find his memory. He's trying to get his memory back. He's trying to remember what the heck's going on. And he has all these skills and talents and whatnot, but he can't figure out what the heck he's doing. And then in the Bourne Ultimatum at the end, he finally finds the guy who he first enacted with. And the guy tells him, hey man, you signed up for this. So that story's telling you that, hey, maybe you signed up for this role that you're playing in this game of life.
Wow.
And you came down the rabbit hole, just like Alice followed the rabbit. And remember the rabbit in the story Alice in Wonderland, which I also decoded. If you have any interest in watching that one's a fantastic decode. The rabbit is white, and the rabbit has a clock, and the clock is a measurement of time. So every time we go down the rabbit hole, we enter into pi, which is time. And eventually time runs out for all of us, because death is the very one thing that none of us escape. None of us escape that. So when we're down here in Wonderland, which in Stranger Things, it's called the upside down world, we're living in the upside down world. That's why everything's inverted here. And you have all this perversion and, but it's really interesting because people think, they want to use this devil character as their scapegoat. But what's fascinating about that word scapegoat is that it's the goat. If you go follow that actual story in the Bible, it's in Leviticus chapter 16 verses 3, I think. And it talks about God and him sending off one of the energies into this goat, and it's called the scapegoat. And this is the goat card, the devil card, which is card 15, right there. And this card 15, is tied to the rabbit card, because when you go into, let me show you, when you go into alchemy now, when you go into the Royal Society of Chemistry right here, and you look at element 15, which is the devil's element, right? It's called phosphorus. And what do the Greeks call Lucifer? They call him phosphorus. Okay? Look at what the weight is of phosphorus. It's 30. So you have the rabbit card with the devil card together. So the devil went down the rabbit hole and created duality, which is what we all living into and playing out our part. And if you want to get really technical, this right here, this shape that this is the stick model of phosphorus, which is, the very same thing as this right here. The square and compass. You see that shape right there? That's the stick model for phosphorus right there. And that's what the Masons use as their logo, as their symbol. So does that mean the Masons are demonic or devilish? No, it doesn't mean that. What it's signifying is they are the masters, or they want to be the masters of duality. They want to control duality. It's all about control. That's what it's all about in this world that we all live in, is control. And it all has to do with the script. And of course, the machinations that all of us have kind of expressed is the separation point of trying to say the scapegoat is the devil, trying to blame. Now, I'm not saying that we're not being influenced, because I say we're being used. right? So we're all playing out our part. And you may shift. I mean, that pendulum that swings, you may end up getting some kind of knowledge and say, oh my God, wait a minute, I better start to do this. And the pendulum for you will swing a certain way. And the pendulum is the regulator of the energy in this world, which is just the sine wave. The pendulum moves like this, back and forth, like a grandfather clock goes like this. Well, if you flip it on its side, it's the sine wave that goes up and down, the sin wave, the dragon wave. The dragon wave. And you know what, I'll just show all of you, just so I can kind of support what I'm saying. And because I don't want to just say my opinion without supporting it. So in numerology, let me share my screen again. In numerology, let me just get rid of these right here.
Yeah, and Logan,
yes,
before we get off too, because we just have like 15 minutes. Can you please show the thing that you showed me about the Simpsons guy and the
Matt Groening?
Yeah.
Well, why don't I show you guys the Keanu Reeves, because I know where it's at. So I decoded John Wick, and when I did, I found this anomaly, and which is rather interesting because so the methodology that I've come up with, ladies and gentlemen, it's called alchemology. And what it is, it's a blend of numerology and alchemy. And numerology, of course, is just the science of numbers. It's taking each letter and then getting its numerical connection to that. So Keanu is a 25156, the breakdown of that. But this is his full birth name. And then what you want to do, the second step, is to then connect the elements that match up with the numbers. So the letter K is the number 2, and that would be the second element called helium. The letter E would be the number 5, and that would be the element boron, and so on. And when you finally put all these together, you add up all these elements. These are all the atomic masses or weights of these elements measured in a laboratory. And we go over to the trusty calculator and we add those up, and we get the number 143.152. And Sharnael, what was Keanu Reeves' name in the movie The Matrix?
Neo.
Neo, and there it is. Neodymium is 140. One of its atomic weights is measured in a laboratory is 143.910. It's a direct match of his name through this methodology that I've discovered. So, you know, then you have to pose the question, well, okay, are the Wachowski brothers and all those that are in the production of this movie, are they using this methodology, and have I just discovered it? Or with the logical explanation, more logical, is man's being used and we have no control over what we're doing because his name was called Neo for this very specific reason. Because do you realize that to cast this guy and to do all this work on top of doing the whiteboarding and what goes into making a movie and the script and writing everything and the production, and it sounds insane and crazy to think that someone would actually sit down and choose a person to play a role in a movie to match up the name based on what we're seeing right here. And it goes way deeper than this, folks. This is just one example. I have so many other ones. I mean, I can show you Lady Gaga and how she's tied directly into pi and whatnot. But you know, this is just a prime example of where I say that we're all just playing out our script, and you should know what your alchemology is. And I've put a video out on how to decode yourself, and that one right there is, I'll show you, it's right here so everybody can see. But you should watch this one. It's an hour and 5 minutes long. It's right here. And this one right here will give you all the modalities and how to do all of breaking down yourself. And, you know, I did use Matt Groening from The Simpsons, the creator of that. I went and broke down his name, and, you know, I mean, he's just the guy is definitely being used, you know. And how do the Simpsons actually predict so many things that have happened in our matrix reality? You can say, and I had said the guy's a time traveler from the future. That's a possibility. But what if we're just being used playing out our script? And that the script he's just being used to make the shows in The Simpsons. These are things that are being downloaded into the guy's mind, which is our brain, it's the all-seeing eye. I mean, when you take your brain and you look at it, you cut your brain open. I don't know if anybody has seen this before, but when you take your brain and you cut it open, the all-seeing eye is right inside there. It's right there. I mean, you can't miss it.
Keep going.
And-
Sorry, 1 second. Keep going.
Okay. So the all-seeing eye is right there inside of your brain. Make no mistake about it. And, you have a dorsal root and a ventral root, and that's your Jesus Lucifer. That's your black and your white. That's your tree of life and tree of knowledge. And I've shown this so many times over countless videos of how our DNA is just the tree of life and tree of knowledge. And there's no separation. We have both inside of us. So when you really look at that and you realize that we both have the tree of life and tree of knowledge and it's inside of our DNA, well, then you realize that, why would they even say the tree of knowledge was bad? Why would they put that out there in that book that no one knows really where it came from? And, who are the guys that wrote it? I wasn't there when they wrote it. It's been rewritten. And if, I broke down the Bible, the Old Testament was written by the Hebrews and the New Testament was written by the Greeks. That was no accident. I mean, when you start to bring in numerology and you look at Hebrew, this is the black sun, because Hebrews 25 and black sun is 25, which is magnetic. And then you go into the Greek and you get the 17, which is tied into the goldfish. We're being mined for our gold. That's why the New Testament is all about love. These are the two emotions, folks, that we have: love and fear. Everything else is subordinate underneath these two emotions. 16 and 21. Fear and love. And I showed in my decode of Thanksgiving. Now keep in mind, look at these numbers, 16 and 21. Now Thanksgiving, if you do the research on it, I just put a decode out on this. When did they first observe Thanksgiving?
1621.
1621. That's love and fear. So what you're celebrating during Thanksgiving, where is the 1621? There it is, 1621, the feast and Thanksgiving. 1621 is fear and love. That's your duality. What you're doing is celebrating your duality. You're giving thanks to your duality. And the card that's linked to that 16 and 21, 16 plus 21 equals 37. This is the 37th card in the deck. It's called the Jack Diamonds. We're the Jack in the box. This is the United States of America card. July 4th is the Jack Diamonds card. So in essence, when you celebrate Thanksgiving, you're praising the whatever created this reality. And I have all the respect in the world to whatever that is. Even though I don't resonate with this world, all the killing and the predator prey, I don't eat animals anymore because I don't want to be eaten. I couldn't kill an animal if I had to. I really couldn't. I would probably starve because I just consider all life forms precious. I love all animals. I once was a carnivore, but then you go into the Bible and you look at the story of Cain and Abel, and Cain was the guy who gave fruits and vegetables, and he was shunned. His sacrifice was not accepted by the divine. It was Abel who killed an animal and burnt the flesh. That was the acceptance. So the Old Testament is fear, and the New Testament is love, which is where Jesus and brotherhood come into play. But together, the Bible is a whole book, and there are 66 books in the Bible, and that is a battery. The Bible is a battery, and I decoded the Christ battery. Many of you that resonate with that, you should watch that decode, because there are 39 books in the Old Testament and 27 in the New Testament. Well, 27 is tied to the word current and currency. And we're being mined for our gold currency. What is your gold currency? What is my gold currency? It's our energy. It's what our energy gives off. That's our currency. And this is the 27th card in the medicine card deck. It's called the Dragonfly card. Card number 27. What got hurled down to earth? The great dragon.
Wow.
The great dragon is the sine wave. It's called the sin wave. We're all born into this duality. And you're stuck here. And I mean, there's a great show on Netflix called Dark. I know, Sharnael, you've seen it. That show is saying to the world, now I'm not saying it's true, but they're saying that you're stuck in a loop and you just come back as a different character and there's no escaping this place. I have a decode coming out called Prison Planet, and I know many of my subscribers, all the people that I love out there, are waiting for this one. Listen, folks, this one's really going to shake the tree. It's really going to shake the tree because it all comes down to that pyramid. I mean, you see, Jay-Z and all these, and everybody's, oh, that's so demonic. And folks, this is what runs your reality. That's why it's on the back of a dollar bill. That's called a tetrahedron, by the way. And the tetrahedron has a mirror of it. If you flip it upside down and then it comes together, that's called an octahedron. And that's where the song Eye in the Sky came from for Alan Parsons Project. Eye in the sky, maker of fools. I'm looking at you. The eye in the sky is your DNA. You're being watched constantly through your expressions. You're being mined for your gold. And these people that are collecting a lot of the gold are the ones that are in the movies and, on stage playing music and whatnot. And obviously the majority of them have no freaking clue that's what's going on, that they're being mined for their gold. We're entertainment, not for just us, but there's something beyond our physical that's running that. And that's what we're feeding. This is a complete battery. Our world is a battery. It's electricity. You have only 3 modalities, which Ken Wheeler, the great Ken Wheeler, and my friend Santos Bonacci, and all these greats talk about the 3 modalities: dielectricity, magnetism, and electricity. That's the Trinity right there. And you get away from all the dogma and the propaganda. Let's talk about real science and how things really work. And we're talking about dielectricity, magnetism, and electricity. That's the real Trinity. Forget about the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That's dielectricity, magnetism, and electricity. And when you measure those through these layers that I've been showing over and over, so we can get a visual, because, Sharnael, we think in pictures. Mm-hmm. If I say to you, hey, what does your refrigerator look like? You instantly have a picture of your refrigerator in your kitchen. What kind of car do you drive? What color is your car? You instantly get a picture of it in your mind. We don't think in anything other than pictures. So that's why we can break down the words we speak through these great symbols, and they're not demonic, because I've proven that the Bible is connected to these cards. So if you fancy theology, well, then that would make your Bible demonic and satanic. So, instead of judging things like Baphomet or, the temple of Set or Satan and all that stuff, they're just doing their freaking job, those people. That's all they're doing. Like Lady Gaga's just doing her job. She's just playing out her script.
Well, you and I have had this discussion because I've been working with these other people who do scalar waves, and I'm going to do a whole show on that too. And they were able to use scalar waves for the measurement purposes of different categories in people's lives or events, lives, or organizations or corporations, and they could use the waves to actually measure loyalty, love, their relationship with people, their connection to God, their connection to purpose, their connection to money, what have you. And they did these people who had been claimed to be witches, including Joan of Arc, who obviously isn't a witch, but she was, put to death as a witch. And then they did like Notre Dame, and then they did like Aleister Crowley and, multiple different people, just to show a spectrum of like what is similar to what you're doing, decoding, but an actual biofield and or organizations setup. Well, what was fascinating to me is, of course, I found you at the same time I'm doing all this. What was fascinating to me is many of the people like Princess Diana and whoever you had high numbers for enlightenment, Gandhi, Christ, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother, high numbers, and their connection to God obviously really high, and all those things are great. And then here we go with what was their level of enjoying their role. And it was kind of high for some of them and some of them not so much. But what was really interesting to me is some of them who were technically sinister scored really terrible, like maybe 37 out of 1,000 in integrity, or 10 out of 1,000 in relationships, or whatever. When you would get to the part where these quote sinister people enjoyed their role, it was always like 100%. They enjoyed it. They knew what their role was. They knew what their purpose was with high numbers, and they enjoyed it, which is kind of scary because you're just like, oh my God, it's like those mad scientists who are like, kind of scary, whatever. But all of this is interesting to me, very fascinating. And, even if you don't agree with everything that he's saying, I would encourage you to go look at some of his work and actually see if any dots are connecting for you personally out there who are watching, just because, I love science. I love numbers. I'm kind of a geek, and there are certain formulas and or things that I've used to decode over the years. And some of the things that he is using, I haven't even gone there, and so one of the things that jumped out to me was when you're doing the Simpsons is you showed the natal chart, and it showed all the planets in a certain place, which remind me what you call that again, if they call it something when they're all the planets in one house.
Yeah, if you have 3 or more planets inside of one house, it's referred to as a stellium.
Yes, and whatever your explanation of what was going on, which I'm not a natal chart reader, but it made sense when I was watching it, is you were like, oh, well, this guy, it's showing that he's a time traveler, and that's probably why he was able to get this information and bring it back, and and then you were like, boom, 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 of how almost everything that he was related to 88, which also had something to do with time travel. And anyway, so all that being said is, you and I agree on a lot of things. We don't necessarily agree on. I don't really care. Like for me, it's about everyone's own personal journey, and as long as everything has the undercurrent of love, and I've just so enjoyed like getting to know you and hearing what you're doing and what you're saying, and seeing some other things outside of whatever I've investigated, and then using what did resonate with me to learn more about myself, because I did have my own reading done, and you plugged in all my numbers and my birthdays and did the chart, and you did like the human design and the alchemy and all of that. And you know what? It was like, wow, that was honestly, for me, what it did is it reminded me of some things that I knew. It confirmed some things that I knew, some things that were even told to me over the years many, many times, but somehow kind of just like got brushed aside, or maybe I got more focused on other things or other people or other situations, and sort of kind of forgot, I guess, and or didn't jump fully in because I didn't actually think that, like, I didn't have permission, or felt like I didn't have permission to actually do my mission. And when I was looking at some of the things you were showing me, I was like, holy crap, like this means that, and that's what's in my heart. And so it just kind of like reignited, I guess, and gave me permission to be okay with the things that I'm born to do, and also to explore some of these other things that I may not have actually looked at before that I'm born to do, or that are there in the code, and to not feel like me doing me is bad or good, or it just is, and not to feel like I'm leaving anybody behind if I'm just doing me, because authenticity is key in everything. And so, do I still think that I could change the game? Yeah. And if that's how they made me to be, then okay.
That's really all that matters, ladies and gentlemen. It's not, if you set aside the horror things that I said, like, oh my God, my life's scripted, I have no control. Set that aside and just discover your keys to your kingdom and get your confirmations. You know, Sharnael, when I was giving you your reading, you had bells going off, you had confirmations, and that allows you to open those doors. Many of you have so many doors and no keys. And astrology and numerology and the human design and personality types and the Enneagram and the color and the Mayan astrology, all these layers are keys to unlock your doors and to become I know thyself, which is the age of Aquarius. There's no more secrets anymore. There's nothing that they have hidden the secret knowledge. The occult world, which just means secret, is now wide open. And the great decoders out there that are expressing what they see are part of this great work of opening the doors for other people, or at least handing them the keys and saying, here's your keys to your door. And a lot of it is about having that skeleton key, which can open pretty much any door you want. You know what I mean? But so you can set that aside and forget about man being used. But I wanted to just, before we go, I wanted to show you one prime example really quickly of the anomaly that I found with, you know, I'll go with the President Trump. Now, we know there are 66 books in the Bible, and we know that Donald John Trump, through numerology, equals the number 66. We also know that Michael Richard Pence, his co-partner, his name also equals the number 66. And if you talk about the book of Revelation, which is the 66th book, it talks about the trumpets being blown, or the trumpets being blown. You see? So I'm showing this because when you decode Trump and Pence, which I've done quite considerably a lot in a lot of my decodes, especially that anomaly right there, those guys are being used. That's why their numbers are 66 in numerology, and they're talked about in the trumpets being blown, the trumpets being blown in the 66th book of the Bible, the last book of that spell book, because they're part of that prophecy. They were assigned to come here to fulfill their obligations. Remember that in the Chinese zodiac, we're in the year of the rat. 2020 is the year of the rat, the first sign. And the rat is exactly what Trump's job was to do, was to expose all the rats and drain the swamp where the rats hung out. And that's exactly what he's done. He's caused so much division, but ultimately he works for the same boss. So you can love him all you want. You can love Biden if you like him. They both work as a team, maybe not consciously, but unconsciously they work as red and blue. That's why Democrats are blue and Republicans are red, because like Santos Bonacci said, it's all about the Taurus fields, the red and blue shift, red shift. That makes up science, Taurus fields, and magnetism. And that is what Democrats and Republicans are all about. And they're just using you to keep themselves alive as energy. Because if no one paid any attention to politics, those characters would not have any power on the world stage. But the very reason why they do is because people tune into the debates and they give that energy through their emotions. Like, oh, I don't believe what he said. Anytime you get emotionally involved with anything on the world stage, you give it energy. So the very one thing that you probably despise, you're giving it energy when you put your faith into something such as those people. So it's really important to understand or understand that politics is just an energy source. And if you give your energy to it, it will grow. So if you want it to dissolve and stop growing, then stop putting your faith in these sock puppets, because they are just being used and playing out their roles. And they're just part of the script. That's it. You know, like them or not, just become neutral. I always suggest to all my listeners and all of my fellow decoders, if you can remain neutral in the very middle, that is your best bet, because once you give your energy to something, you will feed it, keeping it alive. And it's very challenging to really stay in that level of love, because we're born to be sinners, and we're born to kind of, you know, I gave you the analogy of if you were to bring 100 people in a room and you had to feed those 100 people, and you could only choose 2 foods, and it was pizza and steamed broccoli, which one of those foods would get eaten first? It would be the pizza. And the pizza is a dead food. And the broccoli's alive. But we as human beings, we are geared towards consuming dead things. That's what and it keeps us stuck down here in the rabbit hole. So the only way to ascend is to be, in my opinion, is to be in the middle. Because, you know, the battery is positive. It's fear and love. So if you know, I'm a light worker. You're not a light worker. You work in the light. You're a dark entity. You have no light about you at all as a human being. You don't give off any light unless you use thermal imaging. You know, if you turn the lights off in a pitch black room, no one's going to see you. So you're not a light worker. You work in the light. That's a big difference. And the light is the light exposes the monsters, which then you get into superheroes and villains, and they're all just playing out their part in their roles. And that's why we're geared towards like these, you know, I love Marvel and the comics and the movies now, and, you know, all the superheroes. I love all that stuff because it's good versus evil. And, you know, remember, folks, those of you that like to be that light worker, you better make friends with your enemy, the dark, because if you don't make friends with that, you ain't got no job. You need the dark to have a job to be a light worker.
Well,
so you got to understand the duality.
Well, one of the things when I'm, you know, between looking at some of your work and then these other guys too, is Sasha Stone had them on, and when they were talking about the different measurements of these people who enjoyed their role, whether they were light or dark or what have you, you know, the thing that Sasha was talking about, it was basically saying, okay, so if they're just playing a role and they're sitting here kind of like, here am I, send me. And, you know, because I look at it as not necessarily being used, but more being called different, just slight different, and it's okay. But I also get what you're saying about being used for, in mind for gold and currency. But when Sasha was talking about if something is sent on purpose to be dark, like what would be the benefit of that? You know, and
keeps the balance. Yeah, keeps the balance. If everybody was just all marshmallow and fluffy marshmallow clouds and rainbows, and you had nothing to tear that down, there would be no balance.
Well,
that duality, there has to be predator prey in order for the world to be balanced. We live in an ecosystem. I mean, if you listen, the easiest way to sum this up is go watch the documentary, The Biggest Little Farm. If you want to have some really eye-opening, enlightening moments, go watch that documentary. That shows you absolute proof that you need death and regeneration in order for something to sustain itself. And that's exactly what that couple did.
Well, what he was saying is, and I will look into that for sure, but he was saying is like without dark, some people wouldn't even come to their highest level light of or their purpose. And, you know, that pain is a teacher. I mean, not his words, but, you know, and even in this situation that we've been over the last few months, which is also something that you coded, and I'm not going to say the word for the sake of keeping my channel, and it's considered an event, and it's a battery, and it's currency, but it's also let other people have this time to sit and maybe explore some inner things to, you know, as they're in the quote dark, to come stand up and shine and to be their best, or change jobs, or rethink what they're doing, or look into other things, or to heal, or yes, and they could have had the choices, and they still have the choices to escape and drink and do drugs and beat their wives and their kids or their husband. And, you know, so it's all about will, and it's all about choice. And I do agree about the fear and love. And we just had a guest on that was talking about fear and love. And love is the only forward motion. And if we can just stay in the presence and also love, what I love about what you're doing and what you're teaching is for anyone who's really looking to delve into understanding and remembering who they truly are, that you give tools that I haven't seen before on how we can decode our own self so we can be the best version of us here now, so we can do what we're supposed to do while we're here, whatever it looks like after, or whatever, all those things, that's, you know, debatable all day.
Very well said. It's all about really, you know, knowing your true power here, and that's it. I mean, like I said, if you set aside all of my opinions, and they're just my opinions, right? But if you set aside everything we talked about here about what I believe about us being used as a role, it really is irrelevant, because when you start to decode who you are, you will find your true power, and then everything else is kind of irrelevant. It's a moot point, because then you're focusing on your true power, and whether you're being used or not, I believe the whole point of life is to discover your true power. I had a a website called 22days.com, and the slogan was "Empower the superhero within you." And I believe we're all superheroes, but we lost. I was telling you last night, there was a show in 1981 called The Greatest American Hero. It only ran for 3 seasons, but that was all about a guy visited by aliens, given a superhero suit, and he loses the instruction manual on how to use it. But he ends up putting it on and going out there and fighting crime and crashing through buildings and windows and just bumbling around. But he ends up, being that superhero. And the whole point of that is that we all have lost our instruction manual, which are these modalities right here, and the tarot, and our birthdays, and our astrology and natal charts. Those are our blueprints. And they've been told by the church to stay away from that, because they know that if you discover your true power, you're going to take off like a rocket, and they will not have no power over you. That's the whole point of this whole thing.
Well, definitely, if you guys resonate, or if you're looking into figuring out what your powers are, what your superpowers are, check it out. Be open-minded. You don't have to agree with everything. I don't, and that's okay. And that's what's cool about my show, and that's what's cool about hanging out with him the last couple of weeks is, we're able to discuss things and talk about it and disagree and be like, peace, you're still cool, and that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about is just accepting each other's opinions and then just meeting in the middle. Like I actually was born, talk about being used. I was born in Massachusetts, right on the Connecticut-Massachusetts line, that dividing line. My life has been completely wrapped around just standing in the middle of neutrality and division and being in the gray, as you will, like the color gray. And there was a big lake where I'm from, and the whole long word that was all about, it's the Nipmuc Indians, but the breakdown of it was, you fish on your side, I fish on my side, nobody fishes in the middle. So it's a matter of, you do your thing, I do my thing, and then the middle is that neutral point. And that's the point that everybody should be focused on, instead of arguing and causing division. And like, hey, if you believe in the flat earth, great, but don't slam somebody if they believe in the globe. Don't slam somebody if they believe in the concave earth, because we don't really know. And even if we end up figuring out the way this planet's shaped, how's that going to change your life? Well, you're going to have bragging rights. You're going to say, oh, see, I told you so. Because, this whole world is mainly about looking good and trying to prove somebody wrong just so you can be right. And that's all about looking good. It's all about looking good. Everybody wants to look good, and no one wants to look bad. So if we can get rid of that and just stand in the middle and say, you know what? Okay, cool. I respect and it's tough because I even get challenged by this. I'm sure, Sharnael, you do too. And all of you listening, it's very challenging to really accept that and just be like, let's just agree to disagree. But really what all of you should be focused on is finding your true power.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. The age of Aquarius is here. That's called the New World Order, by the way. That's what they're just calling it, but it's the age of Aquarius. And it's all about, I know thyself. I know thyself. You got to know who you are. And if you don't know who you are, you're going to get lost. You cannot if you're an entrepreneur and you're running your business the same way you did last year, and you keep doing that the same way, your business will fail. You must adapt. Everything's moving virtual right now.
Yeah.
Because of this whole craziness going on, right? Yes. So everybody's having to reinvent themselves. A lot of people are in the dumps. A lot of people have no incomes. It's just a really challenging time for a lot of people. So if you're stuck at home and you have access to the internet, the very best thing you can do is to decode yourself, because then you'll find your true power. And when you find your true power, you'll unlock doors, it'll raise your vibration, and then you'll attract things on that same frequency. Yeah. It's all about frequency, folks. Yeah. That's what it's about, especially in relationships. Mm-hmm. If you're single, you should put all your energy into decoding who you are and then raising the bar. And then when you go out to find somebody, your vibration will be higher than what it was. Yeah. Some of you just jump in from one relationship to the next. You don't do any healing, and then you end up attracting the same kind of person and you get the same results. Exactly. And it's just, you get nowhere.
So, and speaking of that, you guys, if you're interested in understanding that too, definitely check out my books.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you a copy of this too, by the way. But the Science of Miracles goes into changing that biofield and getting different patterns. And we have went 15 minutes over, so I'm going to go ahead and have to close. But for everyone who's watching, thank you so much for hanging out with us. I had such a great time. I had a great time with you, Logan.
Thank you.
And I know we will continue on our journeys to figure out like what this next phase is for us. And part of that really is key in knowing who we are. So I encourage you guys.
Like my t-shirt says, limited edition human. That's what you are.
Yeah.
When you wear this t-shirt, you attract that energy. You're limited edition. So become limited editions by discovering who you are.
Yes. And I'm going to post your links here, and that way people can have clickable ways to connect with your YouTube and your Facebook and all of that. And also, you guys, tomorrow, I will have Laura Eisenhower on. She's going to talk about December 21st and what she feels is going on based on the things that she's looking at. I know we'll definitely want to connect with that. And then also on Thursday night at 7, I will have Jason Q. We have a show every week, and that's going to be fun. We're going to talk about flat Earth and globe Earth and whatever. I'm still globe, but who cares? Well, maybe I won't. I'm okay to be wrong. That's the cool thing.
Just look into the concave Earth. That's an interesting.
And I'll look into that too, now that I got a new thing. And then Jason Westerfield, who maybe some of you guys know, will be with me Thursday night at 8:30. And we're going to do a source activation upgrade situation. That's going to be fun. We've never done that online before, but that's going to be fun. So hope you guys have a wonderful day. And thank you again, Logan. And we will chat later. Hope you guys have a good night.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Talk
Appreciate
soon.
it.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.